a damn thing about black people. We're human. We like our kids to go to good schools. We love our kids. We never go in no neighborhoods and take people out. Don't do it.
On a sunny Saturday afternoon in May, Ruth Whitfield walked into a grocery store carrying seeds for her garden. A Mother's Day gift from her son. Andre McNeil searched the bakery aisle for a birthday cake for his 3-year-old boy. Pearl Young, who had fed hungry families from her food pantry for 20 years, picked up items for her own kitchen. Celestine Cheney giggled with her sister as they filled their cart with strawberries for shortcake. A few moments later, none of them would be alive. At 2:30 p.m. on May 14th, 2022, an 18-year-old named Peyton Gendron drove 200 miles from his suburban home to the only grocery store serving Buffalo's predominantly black East Side neighborhood. Armed with a rifle covered in racial slurs and the names of other mass shooters, wearing tactical body armor and a helmet-mounted camera, he live-streamed himself hunting black Americans in the aisles of Tops Friendly Market. For 6 minutes, he moved through the aisles like he was playing a video game. He'd studied the store layout. He knew where people would run, where they would hide. He fired on Roberta Drury, 32 years old, who was just picking up dinner for her brother. He fired on Marcus Morrison, 52, a father of 6 buying snacks for a family movie night. He also fired on Andre McNeil, still holding that birthday cake for his 3-year-old son. He fired on Pearl Young. He fired on Celestine Cheney. He would also go after Geraldine Talley, Catherine Massey, and Hayward Patterson. But that wasn't it. But here's the moment that tells you everything you need to know about this massacre. Christopher Braden, a Caucasian store employee, was shot in the leg. He fell between the checkout counters. The shooter walked up to him, rifle raised. Braden screamed out, "No!" The shooter looked down at this man on the floor, and he just said, "Sorry," and then he just walked away, left him alive, then continued unaliving mothers, fathers, grandmothers, and grandfathers. 10 people lost their life that day. All of the victims were black, and all of them were someone's entire world. This is their story. This is how a conspiracy theory went from Fox News primetime to a horrific crime in a supermarket. This is about the victims whose names we must remember, the ideology that took their life, and the community that refuses to be erased. This is the story of that May 14th. Hello, strangers. Welcome back to the Strange Bar and Grill. I'm your host, JP. Today I'll be discussing the Tops Buffalo Massacre. I'll be talking about what led up to it, but I also took some time to delve into the backgrounds of the victims because they were truly remarkable human beings, and I wanted to make sure that everyone knew that. So make sure to watch this video until the end. Peyton Gendron was born on June 20th of 2003 in Conklin, New York, a predominantly white suburb of Binghamton, 200 miles from Buffalo, New York. His clueless parents, Paul and Pam, were civil engineers with the New York Department of Transportation. He had 3 younger brothers. They lived in a blue 3-story house. By all external appearances, they seemed to be doing well for themselves. Peyton was described by classmates as a weirdo, a loser, a loner. He graduated from Susquehanna Valley High School in June of 2021 and briefly enrolled at SUNY Broome Community College studying engineering science, but he rarely attended classes because by then, Peyton Gendron had found a different kind of education. In May of 2020, during the C-19 lockdown, 17-year-old Peyton Gendron was bored. Schools were closed. Social interaction had moved entirely online. In that isolation, he started browsing 4chan, specifically the poll board, also known as Politically Incorrect, a space infamous for racism, conspiracy theories, and violent extremism. The Politically Incorrect board taught him through infographics, shitposts, and memes about what they called white genocide. He learned about the Great Replacement Theory, the conspiracy that claims Jewish elites are deliberately importing non-white immigrants to replace white populations and destroy white culture. It's almost like they don't want to become the minority group. Why? Are minorities treated unfairly in the US or something? And if you didn't catch that, that's some sarcasm, of course. Academic studies show that 24% of comments on 4chan's poll board contain explicit or implicit hate speech. The platform has minimal moderation. Anonymity allows the most extreme racist content to flourish unchecked. And during the C-19 lockdowns, when millions of young people were isolated online, platforms like 4chan became radicalization factories. But it was one specific video that awakened Peyton Gendron's hate, the live stream of the Christchurch mosque massacres. So just some brief history here for those that may not know. On March 15th of 2019, a white supremacist in New Zealand live streamed himself unaliving 51 Muslim worshippers at 2 mosques in Christchurch. He wore a helmet-mounted camera. He posted a manifesto filled with Great Replacement ideology. He titled his attack, The Great Replacement. He covered his weapons with white symbols and the names of previous attackers. When Peyton Gendron found a GIF of that attack on 4chan, he then watched the full 17-minute live stream, and everything changed for him. In his manifesto, he wrote, "Brenton Tarrant started my real research into the problems with immigration and foreigners in our white lands. Without his live stream, I would likely have no idea about the real problems the West is facing. I would follow Tarrant's lead and the attacks of so many others like him." Christchurch became his template. He studied it obsessively. He also studied the manifestos and methods of Dylan Roof, Robert Bowers, John Ernest, Patrick Crusius, Anders Behring Breivik. These sick, twisted individuals became his heroes. He called them saints. On 4chan and 8chan, users celebrate these, comparing their high scores and encouraging each other toward real-life effort posting, which is a euphemism for terrorism, basically. On May 12th of 2022, 2 days before the attack, Peyton posted a 180-page manifesto to Google Docs, 4chan, and 8chan. The Anti-Defamation League analyzed it and found 67% was plagiarized directly from Brenton Tarrant's Christchurch manifesto, with 23% copied word for word. He also copied sections from Anders Breivik's and Ted Kaczynski's manifestos. He was basically lazy, just mooching off his parents and copying other people's hateful work. And I don't even know if it's possible to be more of a loser than this guy. The document was a blueprint of hatred, 30 consecutive pages of anti-Semitic narratives claiming to control the world and orchestrate replacement, 10 consecutive pages of anti-black rhetoric using discredited race science, extensive Holocaust denial, self-identification as a fascist, white and anti. The core claimed that white people are being deliberately placed and that violence is the only solution. He wrote that should be at best exiled and at worst executed. He referred to black people as replacers. He stated that there's no political solution and that violence was necessary. But 95 out of the 180 pages focused on tactical gear, weapons, and operational planning. This wasn't just an ideological document, it was an operational manual. On January 14th of 2022, Peyton made his decision. He posted in his private Discord server, "There is no turning back now." For the next 4 months, he documented his preparation on a Discord diary, 673 pages total, posted several times daily. Only he had access until 30 minutes before the attack, ensuring no one could report him to authorities. Now, to understand why he chose this specific Tops Market on Jefferson Avenue, you must first understand how Buffalo, New York became one of America's most segregated cities, and how that segregation created a target. Now, bear with me because the history is important to the story and explains why Peyton chose Buffalo, New York. For over a century, Buffalo's east side has been deliberately isolated, redlined, and starved of investment. In 1937, federal housing maps designated the neighborhood with yellow and red colors, calling the neighborhood declining and hazardous, making it nearly impossible for black residents to get mortgages. When the Kensington Expressway sliced through the heart of the community in the 1960s, it physically severed an already struggling neighborhood, destroying the tree-lined Humboldt Parkway and filling the air with exhaust. Which is common, by the way. So this is nothing new, right? They usually put railway and things that people don't want in their neighborhoods, they usually put them in the black neighborhoods and further drive down the value and quality of life and quality of the air and whatnot in those communities. And if you haven't seen my video on rail yards and weapons, you should go check that out as well. It's interesting. 85% of Buffalo's black residents live east of Main Street, which functions as the city's racial dividing line. The median household income in the area around Tops is less than $20,000 per year. The average house that's built in this area was built back in 1938. So not a lot of investment in this area. Vacant lots in urban prairie mark where houses once stood before decades of disinvestment hollowed out the neighborhood. And in this food desert, where 40% of residents don't own cars, where all 51 census block groups with limited supermarket access are located east of Main Street, there was one grocery store, Tops Friendly Market, at 1275 Jefferson Avenue. The store had opened in 2003 after nearly a decade of community advocacy. Multiple supermarket chains had refused to locate there. When Tops finally agreed, it was treated as a triumph, the first full-scale supermarket on Jefferson Avenue in decades. The 29,000 square foot store wasn't perfect. The produce was often inferior to stores in other neighborhoods. Items frequently ran out, but it was theirs. It was the village watering hole, the place where neighbors saw each other, where Saturday afternoon shopping was a social ritual. And the shooter knew all of this. He studied census data and identified zip code 14208 as having the highest percentage of African American residents in upstate New York, 78% to be exact. He used Google Maps to scout the location. He visited 3 times on March 8th of 2022, counting the number of black and white people, drawing color-coded maps of the store layout. He checked Google's popular times graph to determine when the most people would be out shopping. He confronted security guard Aaron Salter during that reconnaissance trip and claimed he was collecting census data. He wrote in his online diary, "In hindsight, that was a close call." Then he wrote, "I'm going to have to that security guard at Tops. A century of segregation, decades of disinvestment, and the concentration of Buffalo's black community into one isolated neighborhood with one grocery store had created exactly what a white terrorist needed, a predictable place where black people gathered." After doing some recon, he then went on to collect weapons. He purchased a Bushmaster AR-15 style rifle legally from Vintage Firearms in Endicott, New York. He passed federal background checks via Form 4473. He then illegally modified the rifle to accept 30-round magazines, which is banned in New York. He purchased additional firearms, a Mossberg 500 shotgun, Savage Axis XP rifle. He bought ammunition and 30-round magazines in Pennsylvania, which is of course illegal in New York. He also used his weapon as a sort of manifesto. Using white paint, he covered his rifle with the catalog of hate. He added the N-word to it, the number 14, which is a white slogan, 14 words. He wrote, "Here's your reparations." He wrote the names of mass shooters Dylan Roof and John Ernest. He wrote the names of the Waukesha Christmas parade victims. He wrote "We Was Kangs," which is a racist 4chan meme. He wrote "White Lives Matter." He added the sun in red, which was a black sun Nazi symbol. He made references to victims of crimes he attributed to black perpetrators. His rifle was a mobile monument to white ideology. He also went and gathered additional equipment such as body armor that he purchased on eBay, a tactical helmet, a GoPro Hero 7 camera attached to the helmet for live streaming. He purchased military fatigues, hearing protection, and tactical gloves. He funded all this by selling personal possessions at flea markets and pawn shops, raising approximately $10,500. Keeping in mind, his parents said they had no clue he was doing any of this, which is crazy because growing up, we couldn't even leave our doors closed like that in our house, not for that long. In his daily posts, Peyton revealed someone struggling with moral doubts but unable to stop. Over a dozen times he said, "I can't turn back now." He expressed not wanting to carry out the attack, but felt obligated to an imagined future audience. He felt he was fulfilling a destiny or a curse. His parents knew nothing. They didn't know he'd quit college. They didn't know about the weapons and ammunition hidden in his bedroom. They didn't know about the conspiracy theories consuming him. Still, this boggles my mind when parents don't know their kids have a whole arsenal in their bedroom or have some notion of what they're doing in their spare time, or they don't know what they're consuming as far as news or all these messages and stuff on a daily basis. It's kind of wild. And I'm not talking out of my butt because I do have 3 children and I am nosy and their mother is nosy. But I have a nephew on my wife's side that fell down a similar type of pipeline on some straight up like raccoonery stuff. Like he's mixed, but he's on some weird stuff. And I should probably leave that alone before I set off a civil war in my household, but if you come back to this, and this part has been edited out, my wife and her sister got to me. But he knows he's a raccoon though. I mean, Ronald McDonald knows he's a clown, right? There's gotta be some level of self-awareness. Anyway, I keep getting off script, let's get back to it. On the night of May 13th of 2022, Peyton Gendron made his final reconnaissance trip to Tops. The next afternoon, he would return with his rifle and his camera, ready to add his name to the list of white saints he worshipped. But here's the crucial context. Peyton Gendron did not radicalize in a vacuum. The Great Replacement theory he absorbed on 4chan wasn't just fringe ideology in dark corners of the internet. It had been mainstreamed on Fox News. On April 8th of 2021, Tucker Carlson, the most watched cable news host in America at that time, with over 3 million nightly viewers, gave what the Anti-Defamation League called an impassioned defense of Great Replacement theory on Fox News primetime. Carlson claimed Democrats were trying to replace the current electorate, the voters now casting ballots with new people, more obedient voters from the third world. He explicitly stated everyone wants to make a racial issue out of it. You know, the white replacement theory. No, this is a voting rights question. But then he immediately endorsed the core premise that immigration is a deliberate plot to replace white Americans. So he's just talking out the side of his mouth, basically. The ADL called for his firing. CEO Jonathan Greenblatt wrote to Fox News, "This is dangerous stuff. The Great Replacement theory is a classic white trope that has inspired shooters in Pittsburgh, El Paso, and Charleston." The Fox Corporation defended Carlson. CEO Lachlan Murdoch refused to fire him. In September of 2021, Carlson escalated, claiming the Biden administration was trying to change the racial mix of the country, and explicitly using the phrase the Great Replacement. This matters because poll data shows the theory's terrifying mainstreaming. 33% of Americans believe immigration is designed to replace voters. 66% of Republicans agree with replacement theory tenets. 72% of Trump voters believe elected officials want more immigration to bring in obedient voters. 68% of Republicans believe demographic shift is motivated by progressive leaders actively trying to leverage political power by replacing conservative white voters. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean I'm a Democrat or something either, because I believe two separate wings on the same bird, if you ask me. When Tucker Carlson promoted replacement theory to millions of viewers, when GOP politicians from Representative Elise Stefanik to Senator Ron Johnson echoed it in campaign ads and speeches, they created a pipeline. As the Poynter Institute noted, it takes only a couple mouse clicks for a curious viewer to get from Tucker Carlson to 4chan. The neo-Nazi website The Daily Stormer celebrated Carlson's segments, writing, "Tucker Carlson finally struck back against the He has more or less totally redeemed himself in my eyes." Peyton Gendron's manifesto echoed Tucker Carlson's rhetoric, just with the added ingredient of genocidal violence. The ideology was the same. The solution was different. On the morning of May 14th, 2022, Peyton Gendron left a note on his bed for his parents. It said, he had to commit this attack for the future of the white race. And since his parents don't pay attention to nothing, they probably didn't see that shit for a couple weeks. He loaded his car with weapons: the Bushmaster, covered in racist symbols, the Mossberg shotgun, the Savage rifle, hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He put on his body armor and tactical helmet with a GoPro mounted on top. He programmed his Twitch livestream. Then he drove 200 miles from Conklin to Buffalo. At approximately 2 p.m., he made a final reconnaissance pass by Tops. One last count of potential victims. At 2:30 p.m., he drove into the parking lot, his camera streaming to an audience that would peak at just 22 live viewers. It would eventually be seen by millions later. As he approached the store entrance, he said on the live stream, "Just gotta go for it." The first shots rang out in the parking lot. 4 people were shot outside. 3 died immediately. 1 was wounded. Ruth Whitfield was 86 years old. She was just walking with her cart, garden seeds inside, when she was fired on and unalived. Hayward Patterson was 67 years old. He was loading groceries into his trunk, helping a customer that he'd driven to the store. He was fired on and unalived. People screamed, some ran, some dove behind cars, while Peyton walked calmly, methodically, firing into bodies. Then he turned toward the entrance. Peyton fired through the front doors, shattering glass. Customers and employees scattered in terror. Some ran for the back exits, some hid in the break room, barricading the door with a heavy desk. Others dove into the milk coolers, huddling between shelves as bullets tore through the store. Then Aaron Salter appeared. The retired police lieutenant, working as security guard, heard the shots and ran toward the gunfire. While others fled, Aaron advanced. He pulled his service weapon and engaged the shooter near the store entrance. Aaron fired multiple times. At least one shot struck the shooter's chest, but the tactical body armor held. The bullet didn't penetrate. Peyton raised his AR-15 and fired back. Aaron Salter fell. The 55-year-old hero died where he stood, near the entrance he was sworn to protect. But his sacrifice bought time. Employees heard the gunfight and knew to run. Customers understood the danger and hid. Because Aaron Salter went down fighting, others survived. At 2:31 p.m., as the shooting was unfolding, assistant manager Letitia Rogers called 911 from her hiding spot inside the store. She whispered into the phone, terrified the shooter might hear her. The 911 dispatcher, Sheila E. Ayers, responded, "Why are you whispering? You don't have to whisper." And then the dispatcher hung up on her. Could you imagine you're calling because there's someone shooting in your store? You call 911 and the lady just says, "Why are you whispering?" and then just hangs up on you? Peyton moved through the aisles methodically, hunting for black people to unalive. Roberta Drury, 32 years old, was shopping for her brother's dinner, unalived. Margus Morrison, 52 years old, buying snacks for family movie night, unalived. Andre McNeil, 53 years old, with a birthday cake for his 3-year-old son, unalived. Celestine Cheney, 65 years old, separated from her sister in the chaos, unable to run fast enough, unalived. Geraldine Talley, 62 years old, sent down an aisle by her fiancé, never to reunite, unalived. Catherine Massey, 72 years old, a civil rights activist, gun control advocate, unalived by the violence she fought against her whole life. Pearl Young, 77 years old, who fed hungry people for 20 years, unalived among the food aisles. Peyton fired 60 shots total. He yelled racial slurs. He moved with tactical precision through the store that he'd mapped out 2 months earlier. And then came the moment that revealed Peyton's true nature. Christopher Braden, a 55-year-old white manager, was shot in the leg and fell between checkout registers. Peyton approached him, rifle raised. Braden screamed out, "No!" The shooter said, "Sorry." Then he just turned and walked away, leaving Braden alive, and continued searching for more black people to fire on. 13 people were hit that day. 11 were black. 2 were white. 10 died. All 10 who died, they were black. This was not random violence. This was a racist massacre. Buffalo police arrived at 2:32 p.m., 1 minute after the first 911 call. 4 minutes later, at 2:36 p.m., patrol officers confronted Peyton at the front of the store. He would aim his rifle at his own neck, appearing to contemplate whether he should take himself out. Officers used de-escalation tactics, talking him down. The shooter lowered his weapon. He removed his tactical gear and body armor. He got on his hands and knees and put his hands behind his back. He surrendered without firing another shot. The attack had lasted 6 minutes. 10 people were deceased. 3 were wounded. Peyton was arrested, placed on SUI watch, and charged with what would eventually become 27 federal counts and 25 state counts, including first-degree murder and domestic terrorism motivated by hate. The first person in New York State history charged with that crime. On his live stream on 4chan, in his manifesto, he had written that he hoped to inspire others. He wanted to be the next saint in the pantheon of white terrorists. But inside that grocery store, he was just a murderer, a dummy with a micro-peen who had been radicalized by memes and manifestos by Tucker Carlson and 4chan, by conspiracy theories and hatred. He drove 200 miles to hunt people in a supermarket. For hours, the bodies of the victims lay where they fell, some in the parking lot, some in the aisles. Investigators processed the scene. Families gathered outside police tape, desperate for information, praying their loved ones weren't among the deceased. The store became a tomb. Yellow police tape surrounded the building. News helicopters circled overhead. The Jefferson Avenue community, already traumatized by decades of disinvestment and violence, had suffered its worst nightmare. The only grocery store in Buffalo's east side was now a crime scene. But before we go any further here, I do want to take some time and discuss the victims here because they are truly amazing, great, beautiful people. Because these aren't just 10 people who passed away. They're not statistics, they're people. And each one was somebody's whole world. Like Ruth Whitfield was 86-year-old. She was the glue that held everything together. For 68 years, Ruth Whitfield was married to the love of her life. When her husband's health declined and he moved to a nursing home, she visited him every single day for 8 years. Every day she would iron his clothes, clip his nails, groom his mustache, pouring herself into maintaining his dignity and quality of life. She never worked professionally, dedicating her entire life to raising her family, including her son, Garnell Whitfield Jr., who became Buffalo's fire commissioner. On May 14th, Ruth had just finished her daily visit to her husband's nursing home. She stopped at Tops to buy seeds. Her son had built her a garden as a Mother's Day present, and she wanted to plant it. She was walking through the parking lot when the shooting started. Ruth Whitfield was the first person that was fired on and unalived. She was hit right outside in the parking lot, and her body left on the pavement for hours as crime scene investigators worked. Her son Garnell would later tell Peyton in court, "You don't know the love that was in her heart. That's what bothers me so much. You robbed the world of an 86-year-old mother, grandmother, a pillar of the community, all because the color of her skin." He called his mother the glue that held us all together. Now she was gone, while buying seeds to plant in a garden meant to honor the life she had built. Roberta Drury, 32 years old. Roberta was the youngest person that day. Born in Cicero, near Syracuse, she moved to Buffalo in 2010 for what was supposed to be temporary, to help care for her oldest brother Christopher after his bone marrow transplant for leukemia. She helped run his restaurant, the Dalmatia, and became part of his family's daily life. She never left Buffalo. It became her home. She was vibrant and outgoing. Those were the words everyone used to describe her. Her sister Amanda said Roberta was always the center of attention and made the whole room smile and laugh. Her family wrote, she couldn't walk a few steps without meeting a new friend. On May 14th, Roberta was doing a routine errand, picking up groceries for her brother Christopher, something for dinner. She was fired on and unalived inside the store. Her mother later said she was a beautiful girl. I think of her alone, laying on the pavement for hours. I've never been able to see or touch her after that day. Roberta was 32 years old. She had come to Buffalo out of love for her brother to save his life after cancer. And in Buffalo, in a grocery store, doing an act of service for family, her life was stolen. Margus Morrison, 52 years old. Margus Morrison loved being around kids. It's why he worked as a school bus aide for Buffalo Public Schools. A father of 6, he was known for his infectious energy and his constant smile. His brother Frederick remembered him as a bubble, a nice guy, full of energy, that smile, that energy, and a funny laugh. It was contagious. Saturday nights were sacred in the Morrison household. Every week, the family gathered for movie night, snacks, togetherness, laughter. On May 14th, Margus went to Tops to pick up the snacks for the night's movie. His stepdaughter Cassandra called him the center of their world. He was fired on and unalived inside the store. The family's movie night never happened. The center of their world was gone. Andre McNeil, 53 years old. May 14th of 2022 was Andre McNeil's son's 3rd birthday. His little boy was turning 3, and Andre went to Tops to buy a birthday cake. It should have been a joyful errand, picking out a cake, maybe with cartoon characters, the kind that makes a 3-year-old's eyes light up. Andre's fiance later wrote on Facebook, "Today my baby was born, but today my soulmate was taken. How do I tell my son his dad's not coming home?" His daughter Deja called him my best friend and said they were inseparable. I called him for literally everything. He had all the answers to my wild questions. He was so wise and he made the world easier to live in. Andre was fired on and unalived inside the store while shopping for his son's birthday cake. His 3-year-old never celebrated his birthday with his father. The little boy will always remember that his dad tried to make his 3rd birthday special. Aaron Salter Jr., 55 years old. For 30 years, Aaron Salter Jr. wore the Buffalo Police Department uniform. He retired in 2018 as a lieutenant, respected by colleagues and community alike. But retirement didn't mean stopping service. He took a job as the security guard at Tops Friendly Market, where he knew customers by name, where he was a part of the community fabric. Aaron was married 33 years to his wife Kimberly. He was a father of 3. He was supposed to protect shoppers picking out produce and pushing carts. When the shooting started at 2:30 p.m., Aaron Salter did not run. He did not hide. He ran toward the gunfire. As shoppers screamed and fled as bullets shattered glass and tore through bodies, Aaron pulled his service weapon and engaged the shooter. He fired multiple times. At least one bullet struck Peyton's tactical vest, but the shooter wore military-grade body armor. Aaron's bullets couldn't penetrate. The shooter returned fire with his AR-15 rifle. Aaron Salter was unalive near the store entrance, cut down while trying to save lives. He's a true hero. We don't know what he prevented. There could have been more victims if not for his actions. Store employees said if Aaron hadn't drawn his weapon, they wouldn't have known to run. His confrontation with Peyton brought precious seconds that saved lives. He went down fighting, and because of that, others lived. Geraldine Talley was 62 years old. Geraldine was known throughout Buffalo's east side as an avid baker. Her banana pudding cakes were legendary. She was always having company over. Her younger sister Kay Chapman Johnson remembered making Thanksgiving-type feasts weekly. They talked every day. Kay called Geraldine her best friend. On May 14th, Geraldine went to Tops with her fiancé for a few items. A quick trip. She sent him down an aisle to retrieve something. It was the last time he saw her alive. Geraldine was fired on and unalived inside the store. She never reunited at the checkout line. She never finished their shopping list. Her sister said, "We had so many plans together, and everything has just been stripped away from us." Celestine Cheney was 65 years old. Celestine was a fighter. She survived breast cancer. She survived 3 aneurysm surgeries. At 65, she was a grandmother of 6 who loved shopping. It wasn't a chore, it was her passion. Every week, her son Wayne would take her to 4 or 5 stores looking for a deal, with stops for like hot dogs or McDonald's along the way. It was their weekend ritual, their time together. On May 14th, Celestine went to Tops with her older sister, Joanne Daniels, who was 74 years old. They were shopping for strawberries and shortcake ingredients, Celestine's favorite dessert. As she walked the aisles filling their cart, deciding to also make shrimp salad, Celestine started giggling with her sister. The sound of sisters laughing together in a grocery store on a Saturday afternoon was one of the last happy sounds in that building. When the shooting started, Joanne thought Celestine was right behind her. Hours later, she learned the truth. Celestine had been shot and unalived. Hayward Patterson was 67 years old. Hayward Patterson was a deacon at State Tabernacle Church of God in Christ. On May 14th, he had just come from helping at the church's soup kitchen, feeding people, as he always did. But Hayward also ran an informal taxi service, driving people to and from Tops for less than ride-sharing services charged. He knew his community couldn't always afford Uber or Lyft, so he helped out. That afternoon, he had driven someone to Tops for their shopping. While his passenger was inside, Hayward waited. When they came out, he was loading their groceries into his trunk. And that's when it happened. Peyton fired on him in the parking lot while he was helping someone with their groceries, ending his life. His pastor later said, "Anywhere he was encouraging people to be the best that they could be." Hayward left behind a wife and a 12-year-old son. Catherine Massey, 72 years old. Catherine, or Cat for short, Massey, was never married. She had no children of her own, but she was a mother to her community. And after 40 years at Blue Cross Blue Shield, Cat retired and poured herself into activism. She was president of the Cherry Street Block Club. She was involved in up to 20 community organizations. She added murals to her neighborhood. She donated supplies to schools. She picked up trash. She wrote letters to the Buffalo News advocating for gun control. And here's what many people didn't know about her. Kat secretly would send pizzas to classrooms and bought books for Buffalo's 34,000 public school children. Those were her children, a former Erie County legislator said. She would fight for anybody without a doubt. A friend called her a powerful, powerful voice. On May 14th, Kat's brother Warren dropped her off at Tops for grocery shopping. Usually he stayed with her, but she told him to come back and pick her up later. Kat was hit and unalived inside the store. The civil rights activist, the gun control advocate, by exactly the kind of violence she had spent years fighting against. Pearl Young was 77 years old. Pearl moved from Alabama to Buffalo and became a pillar of her community. She was a substitute teacher in Buffalo's public schools, beloved by students. She was a grandmother of 8. She was a church missionary at Good Samaritan Church of God in Christ, where her husband served as pastor. And every Saturday for over 20 years, she ran a food pantry in the Central Park neighborhood, feeding people who had nowhere else to turn. Her niece called her a pearl, a gem, a precious jewel that reflected her name. She was a worshiper who loved God and showed that love by feeding the hungry. So like an actual Christian, not the fake Christians that are just hateful, you know the ones. On May 14th, Pearl went to Tops for her regular shopping trip. Maybe she was buying food for her pantry, maybe for her own family, we don't know. What we know is that she was fired on and unalived inside the store. The woman who had fed thousands of people for over 2 decades, who taught children, who lived in her faith in action, unalived while shopping for groceries. These 10 people had lived a combined 633 years. They were parents and grandparents, church deacons and civil rights activists, police officers and teachers, sisters and brothers and beloveds. They were picking up birthday cakes and strawberries, loading groceries into trunks and buying garden seeds. They were doing probably one of the most mundane human things, just weekend shopping, caring for their family, running errands, and they were hunted and because of the color of their skin. On November 28th of 2022, Peyton Gendron pleaded guilty to all 15 state charges. On February 15th of 2023, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. 11 concurrent life sentences plus 90 years. At the sentencing hearing, victims' families spoke. They addressed the shooter directly, forcing him to hear their grief. Garnell Whitfield Jr., son of Ruth Whitfield, told him, "You don't know the love that was in her heart." The sister of Roberta Drury confronted him. The son of Celestine Chaney, the daughter of Andre McNeil. During the proceeding, one family member rushed at Gendron in the courtroom and had to be restrained. Erie County District Attorney instructed that no charges be filed against the person. The grief and rage were understood. Peyton Gendron himself finally spoke, reading a prepared statement. "I'm very sorry for the pain I forced the victims and their families to suffer through. I shot and people because they were black. I believed what I read online and acted out of hate. I don't want anyone to be inspired by me in what I did." Well, guess what? No sympathy for you, Peyton. You're a little and no one believes you're sorry and no one cares about you. But the federal case continues. The Department of Justice announced in January of 2024 that it will seek the death penalty on 27 federal counts, including hate crimes resulting in death. The trial is set for August 2026. I wanted to also add that dispatcher who hung up on Letitia Rogers from the Tops grocery store when she called in to report the shooting, that dispatcher was later placed on administrative leave on May 16th, and then she was fired after a disciplinary hearing on June 2nd. The New York Attorney General launched an investigation into the role of social media platforms in the radicalization. The October 2022 report found that fringe online platforms and live streaming websites were weaponized to publicize and encourage copycat violent attacks, and that a lack of oversight, transparency, and accountability of these platforms allowed hateful and extremist views to proliferate online, leading to radicalization and violence. In March of 2024, a New York judge ruled that Reddit and YouTube must face lawsuits over their role in the shooter's radicalization. The FBI confirmed that this was part of a pattern. FBI Director Christopher Wray had testified in 2019 that the majority of domestic terrorism cases that we've investigated are motivated by some version of what you might call white supremacy violence. DHS identified racially and ethnically motivated violent extremists, particularly white supremacy extremists, as the most persistent and lethal threat in the homeland. Which, you should already know that, but in case you didn't, there you go. Anti-Defamation League data shows that between 2012 and 2021, white supremacists were responsible for 58% of all extremist-related murders in the United States. In 2022 alone, 84% of extremist-related murders were linked to white supremacy. But alright guys, that's going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys think of this one in the comment section. And before I go, let's go ahead and give a shout out to our current members. So shout out to Huff Mommy, Kellen Green, Michelle Ramsey, Shay M, DK the God, Franklin Joan, Laura Notek. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. If I didn't, correct me in the comment section. And then it looks like it says Deep in Guts 8. Deep in Guts 8. All right. Anyway, guys, let me know what you guys think of this one in the comment section.